Hey, how's it going, everybody? Josh Kimmel from Beyond Sight and Sound. Do you love talking shop? Do you have a passion for metal detecting? Well, then jump in and join the rest of us as we tune in to All Metal Mode with Mike and Bob. You're really going to enjoy the show. Sit back, relax, and have some fun. Take it away, guys. We'll see ya.
Hey everybody, this is Mike, and you are listening to the All Metal Mode Talking Show, as Bob likes to call it. Bob and I today we are going to discuss the E-trac in depth. Him and I both had the E-trac for several years. If you look back through our podcast, although we haven't done one in a while, one of the things we want to do is podcast on specific detectors and kind of dive in depth how to use them, how to set them up, where to start, and that kind of stuff. So Bob's got a little bit of time today, and we decided, hey, it'd be a great time to do it on the E-trac. Hey, Bob.
How you doing, Mike?
Oh, I'm glad you're there. There was a pause for a second. I thought, oh, did I lose him already?
There is a possibility. I'm rolling.
Yep. Bob is on the road, so there is a chance we could lose him today. Bob, what do you got anything to start off with that you want to say about the E-trac?
I kind of miss mine.
Yeah, and you're hunting with the CTX now.
Oh yes, I'm very comfortable with it, and at first I wasn't. After using the E-trac for several years, I switched over because had to have the newest and the greatest. You were the one to help me out with that. And when I gave up my E-trac, I'll tell you what, I struggled for the first 3 months. I just wanted to wrap that CTX around the tree. I couldn't stand it. It took so, after knowing the E-trac as well as I did, every time I used it, it seemed like I was learning more and more, and it became more like a friend. I listened to what she had to say, and she spoke the truth.
Yeah.
She lied once in a while, but they all do.
Right.
I really miss the machine. Wouldn't mind having another one.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way as you. I didn't struggle as much with the CTX as you did. I don't know. I kind of took to it pretty easy. Great machine. Love it. One of the big things, a couple of the big things several things I liked about the CTX, but we'll get into that. We're going to do a whole nother show on the CTX, you and I again, but today we're talking about the E-trac, and we're just going to kind of break it down, and I'll tell you my advice for somebody with the E-trac, if you're just getting it or getting familiar with it, take it out of the box, put it together, turn it on, and go metal detecting. It comes factory preset. And if you're going to go hunt parks, schools, that kind of stuff, which I recommend any new machine, that's what you do. Go out and just dig signals, and that's what you need to do. And if you're going to do that, put it together, turn it on, and go. It's that simple.
I agree. That's what I would tell people that would just get one, and sound foreign to them. I says, go to a local park or a local school, dig up pull tabs, dig up just clad coins, just dig everything that repeated, and kind of pay attention to what it's saying, what it's doing, and go slow.
Yes.
I can't stress how slow you need to go.
FBS machines, E-trac, CTX, the Explorers, you have to go slow, very slow. Now, I always liked that because when I got the E-trac, I was using a machine that if you swung it too slow, it would actually false. And I hated that because when you get into trashy areas, it was, you know, and this machine's doing all this crazy stuff, and you couldn't slow down. You know, you had to go where with the E-trac, you can really, it's one of the great things about that machine is you can really sniff out, you know, your deeper, your good finds in the heavy trash and iron and all that.
Well, and be able to, you know, listen to each and every target that's there as compared to, you know, some of these other machines out there. I'm just going to throw out there, Fisher. They like to be swung fast. Well,
Yeah.
My brain doesn't work that fast.
Yeah, I
Maybe
can't.
some people's brain do. Yeah, can't process things that quickly. I like
Right.
that slow scan, and that's where they shine.
Yeah. If you're going to go out and go hunt a park and school like we suggest, a couple things you need to know. You have to noise cancel, which is pretty much just picking the. If I remember right, Bob, I hope I'm saying this right. It's picking the best channel, right?
Yeah, that's all you're doing. You're basically
Yeah.
lifting the coil about a foot or so off the ground and let it run through. Yeah, about a foot off the ground and let it process through the you know, the cleanest channel for you know EMIs. You know,
It's basically your ground balance. You know, think of it as ground balance. Lifted, like Bob said, a foot off the ground. Hit your noise cancel. Keep your coil steady, and it'll run through. It'll show you the progress, and it'll tell you when it's done. Do that, and then just swing slow. And the numbers on the CTX E-trac, we're talking about CTX is the same thing, fairly similar. You know, one of the things when I was a dealer and I sold a lot of E-tracs. One of the things that people got confused about is you've got two sets of numbers. You've got your front number and then your back number, and your front number should usually fall along the 12 line. And think of a line, you know, you've got your screen, and it's your up and down number. It's your vertical number. Where your other number is going to be your horizontal number. And that first number, your vertical number, should always fall along the 12, somewhere around 12. But it can vary. I mean, you can't put too much faith into that, especially if you're getting a good tone. But I had people when I was selling them, Bob, who would say, you know, I'm not finding anything much on the 12 line. You know, there's a lot of 13s, so I didn't dig them. And it's, you know, yeah, a lot of people got that confused. So don't take too much into that first number, especially starting out. When you're brand new, go dig all repeatable signals, and look at your second number. I tell people not even to worry about that first number in the beginning.
they refer to that as the Ferris number, and from what I understand, it really has nothing to do in the processor. Has nothing to do with Ferris whatsoever. From what I understand.
Yes, I believe you're correct on that. But in the beginning, don't even pay attention to that number. Make sure that it repeats, and then look at your second number. Now, your second number, one of the things that kept me from Minealab for so long, and I'm embarrassed to say this, Bob, because I'd heard good things about the early Explorers and stuff, is like, I don't know if I can get used to those numbers. And I think everybody likes, at least in the beginning, you know, you know, it shows pole tab and penny above, you know, the Fishers, the Whites, all those, the icons. Garrett does it, and I thought, there's no icons, there's no nothing, you're going off of numbers. You will learn those numbers so quick.
And don't get hung up on the numbers either. A lot of people, they like to write these numbers, like to write a little list down, and there's nothing wrong with that. But as you get into different sites, after you learn the machine a little bit more, you'll realize you can't get hung up on the numbers.
Exactly.
It's more about the tone and the sound of the signal itself. The numbers are kind of like a secondary thing at that point.
But I will say, but 1 second, Bob. One thing I'll say about the E-trac, the FBS metal detectors, is they ID targets better than any other machine I've ever used. So the numbers are a nice thing to have. And yeah, I agree with Bob. You're listening for tone first, and the tone is very important. But the numbers are very accurate. You know, I've used some machines where the numbers aren't accurate. They jump around. Wouldn't you agree that the FBS machines are by far the most accurate you've ever used?
Most stable, I would like to say. They're the most stable. That when I say don't get hung up on the numbers, is when you're doing a park or a school. You'll know that, for example, pull tabs will constantly fall in a few different numbers. And they could be all over there could be 10 different numbers for a pull tab, depending upon if it's bent, it's missing the tail, if it's on edge. It could be, but you'll get used to those. And
you know what? I think I can explain a little bit better why you're saying that. The numbers are so accurate, people will hold to them and they'll pass up good stuff. And let me explain. A worn barber dime, a dime will usually come in around, let's assume 12 line. We're just, it could vary, but 1245. Most of your dimes are
mine ran. My machine always wrote in 1244.
Okay, yeah, and they'll vary, and from machine to machine. You and I discussed that. My very first E-trac was very different than my second and third E-trac.
Mm-hmm.
But your machine might vary a little bit. But let's say dimes come in at 1244, and people will get lazy and they won't dig a 1241. That's usually a copper penny, but barber dimes will come in there. A worn barber dimes, especially.
A worn barber dime came in at 1238 on mine.
Yes, yeah, they'll come in way lower. So don't get so hung up on the numbers, and that's what you mean. It's not that it's not very accurate, but some things vary, and don't just take your numbers for
because of ground conditions, because circumstances that are in the ground, and it's trying to compensate.
Yes, exactly. So, although they're very stable, they're not, don't just go strictly off your numbers. You're going to miss good stuff. Go out, listen, high repeating signals and dig them is what I would recommend starting out. When I hunted with the E-trac, I only ever hunted in two programs. You can do a lot with it, but you can even load separate patterns for a program. And how I set mine up was I took the basic coin program. I opened it up around nickels a little more. Trying to think exactly what I did. That as far as the screen, I think that's all I did. I opened it up around nickels. And I would run with a lot of discrimination in parks, schools, and that kind of thing. Now, what I would do is you've got the quick mask screen on the E-trac, and I would set up my quick mask screen wide open, and at a push of a button, if I had an iffy signal, I would push my quick mask button and watch what that signal was doing.
And what's funny is that I did it exactly the opposite. I would run no discrimination, and I would hit the button for discrimination if I wanted to kind of narrow in on it. I did just the opposite.
Let me finish how I did it and why I did it, and then I want you to tell us about yours and why you did it your way. Okay?
I just Nothing left to explain there. But go ahead.
Well, there's some more, I think.
Yeah.
The reason I ran mine that way, Bob, is I didn't want bombarded with signals. I tried to run my screen wide open, and it drove me crazy in the multi-tone.
And a lot of people say that.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people who ran theirs like you did, and loved it. I could never get used to it, so I would run a lot of discrimination, parks, schools, depending on where I was at and how much trash. That's how I would run it. And other than when I was relic hunting, and I'll explain that here shortly. But I would use my quick mask, and what I would do if I had an iffy signal, it seemed to me like even deep targets with junk around it, I would at least get enough signal with a bunch of discrimination to flip on my quick mask and investigate further. And what I would do when I would hit that quick mask, it might jump, but it wouldn't jump way down into iron. Now, if it did, and it jumped back up enough times closer to the 12 line, then I would dig it. And most often it was a good signal. Now, if I turned on my quick mask and it jumped right down to iron and the tone sounded a lot better, and it stayed down there around iron, it was, after digging several of those, it was always iron or junk. Usually iron. And so that's how I used mine, because I didn't like all those signals. Now, how do you have any more to say about how you ran yours, Bob, and why?
Well, what I would do is my alternate screen. I would just all I did is I blacked the two bottom lines out on the screen, and that was it. And then I would have, and I ran. Otherwise, my other screen was wide open. And you ran yours primarily on two-tone ferrous, where I ran mine on 99 tone. I ran mine with multi-tone. Well, anyhow, and that's just a difference, and that's the beauty of this thing, is that if one doesn't sound, don't give up on it. You can tailor it to whatever sounds best to the user. Some people will argue. It's like, well, Mike used to argue with me and say, Bob, I know you're missing things. Well, my ears hear those things. I could hear the three different kinds of compositions of Indian pennies in the multi-tone, where a lot of people couldn't. They're just overwhelmed with that kaleidoscope effect of different tones. It took me a while, but I could hear all that through there, and that's why I liked it that way. But again, and maybe in some cases I did miss some good targets, but that's the beauty of it, is that you can tailor these machines to however you want them to be.
Yeah. And I would say most people ran it like me. The most popular programs were how you ran it, the screen you were using, the screen I was using, and two-tone ferrous. Two-tone ferrous is huge on the E-trac and the CTX. Two-tone ferrous, you're listening for everything, but you're investigating the high signals. And it just, that is not only is that a great program for relic hunting, it's a great program when you're in really high concentrations of trash and iron and junk. A quick example, I used to hunt a school in Lancaster, Ohio that's gone now, and I'd seen many, many people hunt that place. I actually drove by one day, and it looked like about 10, 11 guys hunting there, and I had groceries. By the time I got home, got them put away, I wanted to go talk to them. They were gone. The front of that school was probably 75 yards, let's say, long, and there was block across the front where a wrought iron fence had used to go across, but it had been cut out. And from that, the whole length of the front to about 10 yards out was so trashy that I would spend 5-10 minutes in there and I'd just walk away. I'd have to walk away. And then somebody, I wish I could credit who come up with the two-tone Ferris program. I don't know who did it, and I don't know who turned me on to it. But once I learned that, I would go in there in two-tone Ferris, and it's your machine. My machine ran more stable. I could go over each target and kind of see what it's doing. And I pulled a couple 2-centers out of there, several Indian heads, 3 or 4 local tokens, really nice tokens, several more Wheaties. I mean,
if I'm not mistaken, Betty Weber, she primarily uses two-tone Ferris.
I don't know.
If I recall correctly.
Did we talk to her about that when we had her on the podcast?
Yes, I'm pretty sure. I remember that. Yeah.
Two-tone Ferris
I'm pretty sure we did.
Two-tone Ferris just kind of simplifies everything, and I really like that. Now, one of the things when you go into the E-trac, if I remember correctly, there's already a program, the relic mode set up, but it has the tone as smooth or long, and you want to change it to normal. There are a couple things you want to change from the relic mode that's in there. And if I remember right, I would change. That's how I built mine. Was I simply took the relic mode and just made the changes. And I'm trying to think of what else it was. I'm not sure. Now you can find people online who can help. Tell you how they set it up. But I'm trying to think, Bob. I don't remember what else. You never ran it, did you?
No, I didn't. No.
Nope. I think it was the response is like long, smooth. I know it's not. I know you want normal. And maybe the sounds you have to change to two-tone, or something like that. I remember taking my variability up. What are you laughing at, Chuckles?
We're so prepared, huh?
Well, Bob, neither one of us have had one for a while, but we still have a ton of knowledge on it. I mean,
yes, I agree.
It's just I don't have one here in front of me. Haven't had one in years, but I can still remember the machine. I could pick it up right now and go out and kick butt with it. My point is, you do got to change a couple things, but it's nothing major. I know you got to change the audio to normal. I believe they've got it set, like I said, on long or smooth. Change it to normal, and maybe it was in 4 tones or multi-tone, and I think you set it up to 2-tone. If I remember right, it's in multi-tone, and you got to change it to 2-tone. That's what it is. And other than that, you don't really have to change anything else. Of course, you can, one of the great things about the E-trac, and I think you'll agree, Bob, you can do a lot with it, but you don't need to. There's as far as I'm concerned, there's only one really important setting on the E-trac that you have to know and understand, and the others are to tune it to your liking.
And that's what I was trying to say is I have played with it several times and messed around to try to find what I like the best, and then you wonder, are you affecting the performance? No, you're not. And if you are, it's so minute I didn't notice. So whatever you tailor to what sounds best to you is, again, what's best for you, and don't be afraid that you're going to hinder the performance by tweaking it, because I didn't find that to be true.
Yeah, you're tweaking it for what you want. I mean, you're going to want to change the threshold and different things you can do, but there's not a lot of settings that you have to know. Some of those machines out there, you've got to change a lot to get them perform at each individual location, and the E-trac's not like that. For example, I ran those 2 programs, and the only thing I ever worried about, and the only really important, once you have your machine set up and where you like it, and your threshold and stuff like that, the only really important thing is variability, and to understand what that does, and that's under your tone ID. And the reason that is, if you turn your variability up, it amplifies deeper signals, and a lot of people like that, and that's great. But if you turn it up too high,
it's hard to differentiate.
Hold on, I messed up. Not variability. Variability. I'm sorry. Variability is. How do I explain variability? Now, I would turn my variability up. Factory presets like 24, 25. The higher the variability, the difference in tone. It separates your tones better. You're going to hear a difference between a penny and a quarter better, or a dime and a quarter better. The quarter's even going to be a much higher tone. I'm sorry. So I would set that up higher and leave it. Does that make sense?
Well, I know where you were going with this, and as far as the tone, the setting that you're talking about, it eludes me at this moment.
Volume gain.
You have the manual
Volume
in front
gain.
of you, huh? Volume gain.
Yeah.
And that will separate it'll bring deeper targets, make them sound shallower. Sometimes you'll be in an area where you just don't. You've dug enough plugs, and you realize the older stuff is deeper. So you want that. You want that fainter sound, and just listen for the fainter signals. And that's otherwise you're going to be digging surface coins and constantly digging surface coins, and that's.
Well, the thing with volume gain is this. Here's why this setting is so important. A lot of people like to amplify their deeper targets, and now it doesn't make the metal detector go deeper or find deeper things. It just amplifies the tone for you on deeper targets, which is great in some situations, and it's very very nice to have. But what happens is the higher the volume gain, the more it's gonna make iron sound good, and so you have to be careful with volume gain. There's times where you can run volume gain at 28, 29 out of 30, and it runs fine. The ground's real dry. But if that ground's wet, there's times at the factory setting, it'll amplify. It'll make nails sound like coins. I mean, even turning 90 on it, you'll get a good enough signal. So you have to know where to set your volume gain. That is the only thing you need to worry about on an E-trac. Once you get your initial program set up, volume gain is your most important, by far, thing to know. And if you're digging iron nails and little heads of nails that sound like coins, your volume gain's too high. Turn it down. Turn it down as low as 15, 12. If the ground's real wet, crank it down. Again, volume gain is not making the machine go deeper. It's just amplifying those deeper signals. And to me, that is the most important setting to know on an E-trac. Would you agree, Bob?
Now I'm agreeing.
I remember when I was first learning the E-trac, I was really getting frustrated with. I would go out some days, I would have a great day, just a amazing day. Go out a few days later, it had rained. I didn't even pay attention to the rain, and all of a sudden I'm digging nails that are sounding like coins left and right. I mean, I remember one day I was at this old school, and man, I'm giving up. I gave up. I dug so many nails, and it's like, how do I go out with this machine one day and do so good, don't dig a single nail, and then I go back and just I hit nails all day long. Sound beautiful. And at the time, I had Andy Sabish's book, which is a great book on the E-trac, and did some reading, and I think that's where I came up with. I don't know if it mentions that in Andy's book, but I knew that there was enough information that I needed to turn down my gain, and that's when I learned the importance of the gain. Then I found myself, if I'd go out and if we'd had rain, I'd run my gain way down, and it helped tremendously. But yeah, good stuff, Bob. You got anything to add?
Mm-hmm. No, not as far as that's concerned. No, I agree with that. There's ways to to adjust things that where like you said, if you were in a and I'm not really the one to. I'm not really good at explaining things. I learned it. It took me maybe longer than other people, but it really what took me longer was to learn the Explorer 2. That was my first FBS machine. Mm-hmm. It took me a while to get on with that and know everything it was saying. I didn't have another machine at the time, so it took me a while to get to know that. So when I did get the E-trac, boy, all the lights came on, and there wasn't a lot for me to know right out of the box. I was already finding amazing stuff that I completely left behind. Beat to death hunts that I've been on, that places I could go back to anytime I wanted to, and I thought that I beat them to death with my Explorer 2, and I went with the E-trac, and because it had a lot faster processor as well. Boy, all the lights came on. So it wasn't a big struggle for me for the transition there, as opposed to somebody that might be going from an MXT to an E-trac or any other machine. So for me to explain it out of the book, I'm really not good at explaining this. I can tell you from my experience that it was one of the best machines I've ever had. Matter of fact, it was my second best machine. They have all these new machines on the market right now, and they're boasting about them. And I really think that the E-trac should be re-mentioned again, because as far as I'm concerned, compared to any machine on the market, I think the top two are the CTX and the E-trac.
I agree.
I have used the Deos, but I still feel that the two best machines available today are those two. And if you can't afford, $2,300, $2,500, $2,600, whatever they're charging for the CTXs, and you can get an E-trac for under $1,500.
Yes.
There's nothing that's going to touch it. There's just nothing that's going to touch it.
Yeah, I would say, for the listeners, anybody that's going to listen to this, I would say, I've used Fisher's, I've used some Technetics, I've used some White's machines. Bob, and people out there probably know, I love Tesoros. I've got the Outlaw right now, and that's as much as I love the E-trac for relic hunting in Ohio. The Outlaw is the only machine that I would take over it for relic hunting, and that's saying a lot, because I'd used a lot of different machines trying to find a better relic machine than the E-trac, and I never could. And I used, believe me, I tried.
Let me add to this, because I never claimed to be an expert on any of the other machines. Not even that I compare myself or do I refer to myself as an expert on the FBS, but close enough.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a place that I would refer to as the fields, And what it was is the floods took out these homes. Well, it's not so much they took them out; they ruined them, and that they were bulldozed over, and then grass was planted over that. And people were finding Civil War buttons. They were finding coins, large cents, Indian heads, barbers, seated, and they found all out of these fields. And I know this because when I started hunting the fields, I had people walking their dogs walk by me and say that they hunted it for 5 or 6 years with their whites, and that I'm not going to find them. Not find anything, that they beat them to death for 5 or 6 years, and I'm not going to find anything there. And I was, every day I went down there, I'd be coming back with at least 9 keepers. It could have been, a few flat buttons and an artillery button, or a Pennsylvania Railroad button, Pennsylvania Railroad lock. I found so many different things in these fields. And so then I took other friends with me that used. I have a friend that was a Fisher user for 20-something years, and he used the same machine. And I thought, oh God, I can hunt. I took him there, and
I lost you, Bob. I think we lost Bob. We'll get him back. I get what he's saying. He's gone to places where all these different machines, all these different brands and machines and different models had been over, and you go there with an E-trac and you find so much stuff. And that's true. What I was trying to get at was the E-trac, and what Bob started to say was, you don't hear as much about the E-trac, and we hear about the Deus, and Macro Racer recently come out, and the Nocta Impact, and all these, and I think they're still new enough. We'll hear more and more about them, but you don't hear as much about the E-trac, and we've had Mike Spicer and Carl Smith do a podcast talking about the Deus. And now I've never used one. Bob's never used one. Bob has hunted with a couple different guys with the Deus, and as much talk as there is about the Deus, and you don't even hear about the E-trac much anymore. I personally believe, and this is horrible to say probably because I've never used one, I think you're probably going to do better with. I would suspect that the E-trac is a little bit better machine. And some of the things that lead me to that is talking to people that have them, and the tones are kind of hard to get used to, and it's a squeaky loud machine. You're getting a lot of signals, and I feel like when you're getting all those signals thrown at you, it's very easy to miss the good ones. I know that they struggle with bottle caps. You don't struggle with bottle caps on the E-trac. The guys that Bob hunted with in Pennsylvania were really struggling with hot rocks. You don't struggle with hot rocks with the E-trac. And I think that's the point Bob was trying to make. I'm going to try right now, see if I can get him back. And we'll see.
There we go.
There you are. Bob, I just kind of wrapped up your point. Let me run it by you. I just said, with all the new machines out there, we still think the E-trac is one of the top, from talking to guys that run them, and you've hunted with guys with like the Deus and stuff, that we still think it's a very, very good machine, and probably beat out most of them, some of the other high-end machines.
Like I said, I was just, just to finish up what I was saying with my words, is that I've taken people to these fields that were, really comfortable with their machines, and they couldn't hunt it, and I could with the E-trac, and for years after that, I hunted it with the E-trac, and still to this day hunt it with the CTX and still finding stuff.
Yeah.
So like I said, I would put the E-trac up against any machine on the market, and if you know that machine, you're going to do as well, if not better, in most cases than anybody else using anything else.
I believe that, and I think that's a really bold statement from us, and I almost hate to say it because we've never used a Deus, but from what, you and I both have talked to enough people with the Deus and got enough feedback and stuff that I believe that's a correct saying. Now, we cannot say for certain because we haven't used them ourselves. We haven't hunted with guys enough. I mean, the 2 guys you hunted with just had trouble with it. But that's not saying that they knew their Deus enough. I've talked to a guy in Columbus that hunts with a guy with a Deus, and he consistently does better than him at parks and schools and stuff like that. Now, I suspect relic hunting, at least in Ohio, the E-trac or the Deus would give the E-trac a run for its money. I don't know that, but I suspect relic hunting, it's right up there with an E-trac, but I still would have to question if it's better than an E-trac relic hunting, because you go into two-tone ferrous, and I mean, I don't care how much iron and stuff is there, I could pick out amazing, little tiny buttons and just, take a big shovel full of dirt out, and there's nails, it's littered with nails, and I picked up this little button. So I would be really curious. I would be curious about that. Now, something I want to jump back into, I kind of touched on, is you've got the conductive and the ferrous number on your screen. In the beginning, like I said, the best piece of advice I can get is turn the machine on, leave it exactly stock, and go hunt with it, and dig repeatable signals that, and look at your conductive number on your right. Once you get used to it, that ferrous number can tell you a lot. Where Bob was running it wide open, I wouldn't suggest that starting out. You might find it to be more comfortable. There are a lot of guys who ran it just like you, Bob. There's something to it. Some people, that program's just better for them. But I would suggest not paying attention to that number in the beginning.
I can't run the CTX that way.
No?
No, I can't run the CTX. And the CTX is, if I'm not mistaken, is 50 tone compared to 99 tone on an E-trac. And the E-trac, I loved it that way. It sounded right to me. But I can't. I'm strictly 5 tone with CTX.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And you and I have talked about this. The E-trac, we felt, was a little more stable on numbers. I believe we agreed on that, didn't we?
Yeah. It's where I think there'll be an argument there, because I've had the E-trac the numbers jump all over the place, and you might think, should I dig it or shouldn't I? And I would dig them anyhow and find out that I'm glad I dug it. At the same time, the primary difference between the two machines is what's nice about the E-trac, when you're hitting silver, because there's a fluty warble sound when you're on top of silver, compared to a clad coin and a silver coin. There's a distinctful difference, and it might take a little bit to figure that out, but you'll know it soon enough. It's like you get a big grin on your face.
Yeah.
Here's another one. Here's another one.
I never had the ears for that, but I'll tell you what I mean. I found myself like, ooh, here's a 6-inch coin. this should be silver because it's deep enough. No, it's deep clad. No, it's deep clad. And I would get, but then when I would get a deep silver or that silver tone, I would know it. But sometimes sometimes I would mistake clad for it. But once I hit that silver, I would know it. And I know that there are guys that could distinctly tell the difference each and every time. My ears are not designed to do that. But I did know, although sometimes I would get confused, with clad, I would think it's silver. I always knew when I found silver. You're right, you get that smile on your face like that's a fluty, nice tone. That's silver. Mm-hmm. But I would sometimes mistake clad. But yeah, there were a lot of guys. I can back that up because I know a lot of guys could tell the difference. Absolutely. But that Ferris number, when you're getting iffy signals, that Ferris number, when you're used to the machine, will give you a lot of information. Like I said, if you do your quick mask and it's jumping at the bottom of the screen and staying there, and usually, if you've got deep iron that's fooling the machine, when you open your screen up, all of a sudden that signal gets really good, and it's staying at the bottom. That's because now you're accepting it and it's hitting it real good. Now, if you got an iffy signal that you think's a coin, just like we just did, I was talking about like a coin signal and it was iron, and you turn on your quick mask and it's still a little bit scratchy and iffy, and your Ferris number's jumping up and down, but mostly jumping up, it's still scratchy because it's deep. It really didn't, you didn't open up the screen to accept anything more than what's already there. Does that make sense, Bob?
Yeah, and there's something else, you just kind of brought to mind that, the way the processor works in these FBS machines, for anybody that's new to it, that when you're swinging from left to right, and you'll hear a bunch of chirpy high tones, and this is primarily an open screen. You hear a bunch of chirpy high tones, and you might, wow, how do I know which one of those are good? Swipe back from the other direction. And before you take a step, swipe back over. And what that will do is the machine will have time to process before I take a step, I go left, right, left, and all of a sudden all those chirpy high tones would disappear. And as I did that, it would process those out.
Yes.
And it will, and you're going to hear them from left to right, or whichever way you swing, whichever way you start off with. You're going to hear the chirpy high tones in a real mineralized or trashy area, and the processor will eliminate most of that. And believe me, it will tell you when you'll just know when you are on something.
Yeah.
Now, I know you probably weren't ready for me to jump into this, but I feel it's important too. There's nothing wrong with the stock coil whatsoever. And if you use, I can't speak of any other ones. Than what I use is the 11-inch FES coil, SEF. I'm sorry. When I use that, it's the difference between listening to a radio in mono or stereo, and that's how I felt about it. After I had, Mike, I had the Coiltech Joey coil. I had all of them, all the way up to 15-inch, 12-inch, 15-inch. But when I put that SE, I wanted the 6-inch. What was it? The 8.6, I think it was.
No, it was
you
8.
Couldn't get.
I believe
8-inch. Mm-hmm. I think it was a 6-inch SEF that you couldn't get a hold of it.
I think you're thinking of the 8-inch. I don't know that SCF made a 6-inch, but I'll check.
All right. Well, anyhow, that was a big one. Everybody wanted that little coil, and you couldn't buy them. They were on back order. So I bought the 11-inch, and when I got that, I'll tell you what, it seemed like all my signals turned into three-dimensional signals to me. It was a coil. Once I put that on there, I never went back to the stock coil ever again. Never went back to it.
I've heard people say I never used. Well, I actually I bought SCF the coil you're talking about, but I got it bad. It was somebody had sold it because it was never right. And I did.
Maybe that's what it was. Is an 8x6. 8x6.
Yeah, 6x8 or 8x6, whichever. Yeah, I just looked it up. It was 8x6. Yeah, a lot of guys like that coil a lot. And I know they did really good. They felt like they weren't losing any depth with that SCF coil. I never used either one of those, but I always heard good things. I think from you, I ended up with like a little 6-inch coil or something, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
I would use that for field hunting quite a bit. I would use my 11-inch even in the heavy iron, but if it was real heavy iron, I would switch to that 6-inch and do really good. I ended up having a couple coils, and I think I got them all from you, didn't I?
Well, that's the beauty of this machine, that there's so many different coils out there that you can use.
Yes.
Like I said, if I were to narrow it down to one, it would be the 11-inch. I think it's the 10 by 11, or if I'm not mistaken, that SEF, and that was my. I just left that on all the time. I love that.
Yeah, I know
that
people.
Mixed with, I know you never liked the strap over the arm cuff.
Yeah.
And I did, and I never liked the stock plastic arm cuff because I found it flimsy, and I went ahead and purchased, I don't know who makes this, but an aluminum arm cuff. I can squish it in and get it tight against my arm, and now there's no slap back and forth. And that coil is pretty heavy up there, and I feel the tighter you have it, in your hand and on your forearm, the less fatigue that I would have, over a period of 4 or 5 hours of hunting. But those are the two primary things that I added to my machine. That other than the X1 probe, I think you can only get those used now. I don't even know if you can even get new X1 probes. I don't know.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he's still making them or not. But yeah, I did. I like the Probe 2 to some extent. I'd rather not talk about that. Hey, one of the things I wanted to say that I just thought of when we were talking about setting up the two-tone. If I remember right, if you go into the stock programs and you go to change the relic mode already in there, I think it's on. They have it in conduct, and you've got to change it to Ferris. But either way, you want to make sure you're on normal response, two-tone Ferris instead of conduct, and pretty much that's all you have to do. And that's the two-tone Ferris program. And I don't have one here in front of me to make sure, but I'm pretty sure the factory setting has it in conduct mode, and it sounds very. It's. I don't like it. You want to be in the in Ferris tone. So, other than that, that should be your two-tone Ferris program. But yeah, I agree, and that's I love the CTX, Bob. There's so many good things about the CTX. And we'll do that on another show, but one of the things that I didn't like is, they put a chip in those coils, and now you're very limited on coils.
Yes, very limited.
I didn't like that, and people that loved the SCF coils, they can no longer use them. You can't.
Or the Coil Techs, because that little Joey coil. I'll tell you what, that was and also a go-to coil that I use quite often was that little Joey coil from Coil Tech. I really enjoyed that too, and not as much on the CTX, but for the E-trac, definitely like that little Joey.
Yeah. Now,
Highly recommend it.
One other thing in the expert menu, I always ran recovery fast on. Did you run recovery? I ran recovery fast on both programs.
I try them. I went either way with it. It said that you'd get a little bit more number stability if you ran it fast off, and deep off. You would have better ID numbers. But I ran them both ways.
Yeah, I mostly kept mine in fast and trash density high everywhere, and just because I found it, it seemed like everywhere I hunted, trash density was high enough. I needed to run it on high. I don't know how you did yours, but I set those and forgot them. Like I said, I feel like I already beat a dead horse. The most important setting that you're going to need to know once you get your program set up how you like, and your things like threshold and volume and all those different things, is volume gain. If you're hitting iron, turn it down. If iron sounds too good, turn your volume gain down. It's that simple. And that's the biggest thing that you're going to need to know on this machine. Everything else, you're pretty much, it's how you want it to sound, how you want to hear it. Variability. I liked variability as far as wide as possible. So I would run my variability at like 29, I believe, when I was hunting in the coin program. And did you do that, Bob?
Because what I end up finding myself doing is finding a program that I could use almost anywhere without tweaking. So I would be lying but I think I did run it wide, because I did want to hear the.
You there? Did we lose Bob again? Come on, Bob. Hey, Bob. We'll call him back in a second again, see what's going on. He's driving. The variability is the difference between, like at stock, let's say a copper pennies, whoop, 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 whoop. A quarter will be womp, 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 womp. With variability spread, that penny's going to go womp, 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 womp. And then a silver quarter, or a quarter is going to go womp, womp, womp. I mean, it's going to be a big difference. And the lower the variability number, the more a copper penny and a quarter is going to sound alike. The farther apart, it creates a difference in tone, a much more difference in tone. I don't know if I'm explaining that the best, but that's the deal. That's what I'm trying to say. We're going to call Bob back. Come on, Bob.
Yes, sir.
Come on, Bob. Well, you keep hanging up on me. Am I putting you to sleep, or what's the deal, man?
If anybody noticed, once I start talking too much, Mike just puts me on mute.
Right. That's the deal. Bob's been talking enough. Mute.
Yeah. Yep.
Bob, that's pretty much all I can think of right now.
Well, I like to throw this in, as a final note, is be patient if you feel you're struggling with it. I know a guy that all he ever used was everything when he
losing you, Bob. Losing you. Done lost you. And we lost him again. Oh, geez. Come on, Bob. We'll get him back here in a second. One of the things why I'm waiting on Bob is I wanted to say this. We definitely probably didn't, in no way did we cover everything. We're covering the basics, just giving you a place to start and kind of our opinion on the E-trac. We both think it is an amazing machine, and one of the reasons we're doing this is, like we said, you don't see it talked about as much anymore, and it is still, like Bob would say, it's number one and number two. And even though we haven't used some of those other machines, we've talked to a lot of guys that have, a lot of women, talked to some women too that use those different machines. And we have both used a lot of other machines. We haven't used the Deus, like I said, but most of the other machines, the really well-known machines out there, we've used, and we would put CTX and E-trac at the very top. And but I'm sure we didn't get everything out there, and we'll probably think of things. But if you have any questions, if you have anything you want to add, go to allmetalmode.com, and you can contact me or Bob or myself, either one, and hold on one second, Bob, and shoot us an email if you got questions or things you want to add, or something else that hey, if you use the E-trac and you're really good with it, let's do another episode. Get a hold of us and we'll have you on, and you can talk about the E-trac. And what was you going to say, Bob? Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, be patient, learn your machine. Sometimes when I see that people are getting rid of their machine, I don't know the reason why, whether it's because it is a heavy machine, but I just hope it isn't because people are frustrated with it, because once you get to know that machine, you'll never want to get rid of it.
Well, let me say this too. You brought up a good point. If you're getting rid of it because you're frustrated with it, I hate to say this, you're not doing something right. And let me give you an example. I used some different machines before the Minealabs, and I struggled with them. And when I got the E-trac, when I got my E-trac, I got it within the first month. There was nothing out there on it. I didn't have the book right away, Andy Sabish book. I don't even know if it was out yet. I'm not sure. And it might have come out right when the machine come out. But I learned that machine on my own, without any help, without any YouTube videos and all that. And within the first week, I was fine and silver. I was doing very good with my machine, and that was with nothing out there. So right now, I have another machine that I'm using that I'm struggling with, and I've been struggling with for weeks. The E-trac is not a hard machine to learn. The CTX isn't a hard machine to learn, wouldn't you say? I mean,
no.
The problem with the CTX, not a problem, but what's going to take you longer to learn is the buttons. One of the nice things about the E-trac, anything you want to change, you hit the menu button and you scroll across the top and you decide where you want to go. The CTX has a lot more buttons, a lot more ways to access different stuff. It doesn't
Each button has more than one function.
Yeah, you press it and it does one thing, you press and hold and it'll do another. And that doesn't make it necessarily harder to use. It's harder to learn.
Harder to navigate.
Harder to navigate, exactly. Put very well. But, the E-trac, if you're struggling, I hate to say it, but you need to spend more time with it. And, every machine takes time, but the E-trac was one of the easiest machines for me to learn. Would you agree with that, Bob?
It from right out of the box, I feel it was the easiest machine for me to learn. But I have to tell you, even when I thought I was completely proficient with it, I was still learning stuff that the machine was telling me 2 years or more into it.
Yes.
And so even 2 years into it, I felt that nobody could touch me. Remember how cocky I was when you guys were with your CTXs, and I was just so cocky because I was at one with my E-trac, And yeah, I know I wasn't giving you a fair shake. I was just being cocky, you know. And I was getting under your skin. I remember I was getting under your skin that one day. The three of us.
Well, if you're going to bring it up, let me tell the story because it's funny.
This was several years ago.
It was right after the CTXs came out. Not long. Right. You didn't have one right away. You got one fairly early though. Me, Bob, and another guy met up, and we both had CTXs, and Bob had the E-trac. And we met up at a park, and we were hunting at one end, and Bob was at the other, and he come up, and I just found like one or two silver coins. And Bob, and they were easy to find. They were 6 inches deep. There wasn't a lot of trash in this park. I mean, they were very easy tones for any machine that'll reach down 6 inches. Okay? Bob comes up and he finds a couple silver. Now, keep in mind, he's knocking into me. We're bumping coils. He's hunting right there next to me where I found these silvers, and he pulls out a couple silvers, and his head is exploded. He's Mr. Badass at this point. And it aggravated me because he's like, yeah, see how good me and E-trac did? See how good. Well, these signals weren't anything special. He just got his coil over him before one of us did. And I thought that was funny. But yeah, I think Bob was a little butthurt he didn't have a CTX yet when it comes down to it.
That's exactly what it was. I was definitely jealous. You guys had your stealth fighters, and I was still using my my F-14.
Right, right. Well, but that just now that you've had a CTX for a long time and had them both, I would go back to an E-trac in a heartbeat. I loved my E-trac. To me, the CTX is better balanced, which was better on my shoulder. And I love the bells and whistles, but outright performance-wise, man, in skilled hands, I don't know that a CTX could really beat, or an E-trac could, or a CTX could really beat an E-trac.
I don't think anything can.
Well, I agree. I don't think there's if there's any machines, there might be one or two that's up in the caliber of an E-trac and CTX, but just comparing the E-trac and the CTX, to me, it's the bells and whistles of the CTX, the better weight balance, weight distribution, little better,
a little quicker recovery time, little bit quicker.
I agree.
Yes, but like you said, you have to go slow with either one of those machines. You have to go slow.
Definitely, without a doubt.
Can't stress that enough. I'd holler at guys that were swinging them things like a friggin' helicopter, like they're whacking weeds. It's like,
whoa,
down.
Yeah. And the CTX, if you're a relic hunter or a beach hunter, I know it was huge on the beaches. The GPS, when you're hunting out in the middle of a field, it's really hard to stay on track. And I could watch where I was at in real time, and quickly, with a push of a button, jump between my normal metal detecting screen and my GPS, and I really liked that. But that's bells and whistles to me. Not being tethered to your machine, and you've got this. I always thought it was funny when I got my first CTX, when we saw pictures of them before they were out. The size of the box is deceiving. And although it is larger, it's super lightweight. I mean, you could put it on your shirt pocket or in your shirt pocket, and it doesn't really. It's lightweight, isn't it, Bob?
Mm-hmm.
And I like not being tethered, but outright performance. Man, I think in most cases, 99% of the things you could find with the CTX, you could find with the E-trac.
Oh yeah.
It's that good of a machine, but. Do you have anything else to add, Bob, or are we going to wrap it up?
No. Going to wrap it up because I'm going to lose you for about 10 minutes here shortly. So.
Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap it up, Bob. thanks for putting your 2 cents in. I know you were an excellent E-trac user, and yeah, give me a call when you get back, get through the bad area.
All right, I will.
Talk to you later.
Have a
Bye.
good afternoon. Yes,
Yep.
sir.
So just to wrap it up, I know we by no means did we touch on everything, but we got enough out there to give you a good start. And if you have any questions, if you have anything to add, don't forget, contact us at All Metal Mode. If you go to the contact page, there's, for me and Bob, there's our emails. Give me a call. Give Bob a call. We'd be more than happy to help within any way we can. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. And please, again, if you got anything to add, feel free to get a hold of us. Thank you.
All right. We certainly hope that you all enjoyed the show. From myself, Mike, and Bob, thanks for dropping in. Come back and visit them again. And if you can get out there and find those relics, get out there and dig them up. Do the field hunting, do the woods hunting, the relic hunting, the coin shooting. Remember, All Metal Mode, where we're talking all detecting all the time. Have a wonderful evening, folks, and see us again.